Good evening and welcome to this short psychology topic video, this one titled Encourage Your Students to Fall in Love with Relationships, and of course we're referring to the AQA Paper 3 optional topic that's in the specification this year. All of our previous webinars are now available on the Tutor2U website, so if you go to www.tutor2u.net and then if you click on subjects right at the top, followed by psychology, and then you go into the Explore and Series, and what you'll find is there's a whole series of CPD webinar recordings where we've uploaded all of the YouTube videos, as well as all of the free resources that we provide from these webinars, so that you can have a browse through in your own time and pick up some great teaching and learning activities from there. In terms of other webinars this week, we have one tomorrow that I'll be hosting called Mastering Research Methods, and it's a new series of really short webinars. These ones will only be around 15 to 20 minutes long, and we're going to start by revisiting the sign test tomorrow at 4:30. There is an OCR specific webinar on the 26th. That's going to be led by Andy Gilbert, and then on the 27th we have a webinar that's to do with running an outstanding psychology department, and I'll be joined by Laura Swash for that particular webinar, so that should be a great one as well. Just a final reminder, we have our Fast Track Your Planning for AQA Psychology events taking place, one this Friday on the 23rd of September, one next week on the 30th of September, jam-packed with loads of teaching and learning activities. So if you've got the opportunity to come along, do so. It's going to be a great event. Now, in terms of today's session, quite a lot to get through and loads of activities and ideas to share with you. We'll start by looking at the specification and what we should watch out for if you're teaching relationships, either for the first time or if you've taught it before. And then we'll look at how you can create some application questions around relationships. It's a great topic that lends itself to application questions, which means actually if we can write our own, that makes our life significantly easier. We'll also look at effective essay writing in relationships, and I'll provide you with one sample essay that I've written today, and along with 5 different activities that you could use just with that one sample essay. So it's a great way to sort of see just how useful having sample essays is. And also, because someone requested this, we're going to look at how we can turn a simple burger evaluation paragraph into a sort of year 2 double whopper evaluation, and what needs to be included just to really sort of beef up the evaluation. And then lastly, we'll look at some activities and ideas and things that will hopefully give you some inspiration for teaching this topic, because it is a really great topic. We'll look at issues and debates one more time, and then we'll look at free relationship classics that you can use that are just well-renowned and really great activities for this particular topic. So let's make a start with this sort of what to watch out for. In terms of the old specification and the new specification, they are very different. So on the screen you'll see the old specification, and it was broken down into sort of 5 sections. You had formation, maintenance, and breakdown of romantic relationships, evolutionary explanations, and then the effect of early childhood relationships on later adult relationships. And if we take a look at the new specification, you'll see it's actually broken down into 6 areas. There's a lot more sort of key specialist terminology in the new specification. AQA have really mapped out the different theories that you need and what specialist terms within those theories you need. So do make sure you're really clear on those. In addition to that, and probably most importantly, for those of you that are sort of experienced in coming to the topic for a 2nd or 3rd year, they've added 2 new areas. You've got virtual relationships in there, and concepts like self-disclosure and gating. And then you've got parasocial relationships and 2 different theories and models within that particular area as well. So it's actually quite a large part of the course. It's a very big topic, and lots of, as I say, specialist terminology that you need to make sure your students are really aware with. Now, as always, what I've done is I've mapped out the different sample assessment material questions to the spec, just so you can see the types of questions that they ask, and the types of essays in particular that they ask in this unit. And there's 2 things that sort of jump out at me, 2 potential sort of problems that we should watch out for. Is that there's a real and genuine opportunity for AQA to ask quite a lot of research method questions within relationships. It lends itself to a lot of sort of data analysis and those types of questions, and essay application questions would be quite an obvious thing to appear in this topic, because it's quite easy to come up with decent scenarios to make students apply their knowledge to. So we'll just look at those 2 areas just to begin with. Here is a sample research method question. So I'll quickly read it to you. It says, in a study of parasocial relationships, a researcher studied male and female attachments to their favourite film stars. This is for the one of the new parts of the spec. An overall attachment score was calculated on the basis of answers to the questionnaire. A high score indicated a strong attachment and a low score indicated little attachment. That then comes with a series of 3 different research method questions. So explain why the data in table 1 is a primary data and not secondary. Explain a strength of primary data for 3 marks. And then, most importantly, the one I want to focus on, it says the researcher decided to extend the study by using an inferential test to see if there was a significant difference between the two sets of score. Suggest an appropriate inferential test which the researcher could use, and justify your choice. Now, interesting that they've included an inferential statistics question in the sort of optional topics, and that sort of alarms me and really highlights that we should be watching out for these questions appearing, because inferential statistics we know are hard. We know students often struggle to grasp the concepts, and therefore if they can also appear as a 4-marker in the optional topics, it makes it really important that students understand this area. So this, of course, is where we go to our decision tree, and we have to ask ourselves a series of questions to work out what test the researcher could use. So the first one was, could they use a parametric test? Well, no, in this case, they wouldn't have been able to because it's ordinal data. That answers the second question. Is it nominal? No, we've just said it's going to be ordinal data because they were ranking the different scores. Is it correlational? Well, no, it was a test of the difference between male scores and female scores. And was it an independent groups design? Well, yes, because it was males versus females. And that leads us to the test that it was Mann-Whitney that should have been used. So if we put the question back on the screen, you get your 1 mark for correctly identifying the Mann-Whitney test. That was relatively straightforward for psychology teachers. And then if you work backwards, this is the bit I like about the decision tree. It provides you with enough answers to get the rest of the 4 marks, to get your remaining 3 marks. So we can then say, well, it was a Mann-Whitney because it was an independent groups design experiment. We can then say it was a test of the difference because it's not a correlational experiment. It's actually a test of the difference. We can then say, well, the data was ordinal, and therefore that's why we can use our parametric test to begin with anyway. So we, just by using the decision tree and working backwards once we got the answer, we managed to pick up all 4 of our marks. Okay, on to essay questions with stems. Just give you one example, and then I'm going to provide you with some I've made up just to show you how easy it is to make some up in this particular case. So it says, Teddy is discussing with his girlfriend Sasha. He says, we're in the same year at university, both studying marketing. She was really good at the theoretical side, and I was much better when it came to practical work. We specialise in different areas now. I'm always proud to be seen out of her. Other guys are really jealous. We tell each other everything, no secrets. And then the question that goes with that, discuss factors affecting attraction in romantic relationships and refer to Teddy's comment in your answer, 16 marks. Now, what I like about this topic is once students have seen 1, 2, 3 of these different extracts, they actually find it quite amusing to come up with their own, and even as a teacher I found it quite amusing to come up with them and use students' names from your class. So I'm going to give you 5 because I know that teachers often don't have the time to write these. So I just want to share with you sort of 5 with 5 essay questions so that you've got a little bank of these that you can use for yourself in testing or for students to write essays too. So here's the first one. Denola and Chris are studying psychology in year 13. Both very attracted to someone called Mila. Mila is a very sensible student, and while she finds Chris more attractive, she's just found out that Denola works in Waitrose, earning £7.27 an hour and receiving discount on his groceries and in John Lewis. She also finds out that Chris doesn't have a job, and therefore naturally she decides to start dating Denola. Question that could go with that: use your knowledge of evolutionary explanations for partner preference and explain why Mila starts dating Denola and not Chris. 16 marks. Second one, very similar to the actual sample one. So John is talking to his best friend Blessed about his new girlfriend Jocelyn. He says, Jocelyn is amazing, said John. She's smart, funny and intelligent. We also happen to be in the same psychology class, and she's really good at the approaches topic, and I'm really good at research methods. That's nice, says Blessed, clearly not interested. Also, because she is hot, I just love being seen out of her, as I know that everyone's really jealous, and we tell each other everything. Again, referring to John, discuss 1 or more factors affecting attraction in romantic relationships. Get the idea. Third one, Ben and Harriet are on their very first date. Harriet decides to tell Ben everything about all of her previous partners and doesn't let Ben say a word all evening. Ben, who's naturally quite reserved, decides not to go into his past relationship and reveals very little. The next day, Harriet's gossiping in Mr. Sparks' tutorial, as usual, about her date, and she said that the date didn't go well, and she felt uncomfortable with Ben and probably won't see him again. Here's the question. Referring to Harriet and Ben, discuss the role of self-disclosure in attraction, 16 marks. So you can see just how nice it is to come up with these examples, and actually you could see this being a sort of genuine exam type of question. Nearly last one. Tommy's just been dropped from A Level Physics and decides to pick up A Level Psychology because it's easy. He walks into his new class, which has 17 female students, and his eyes pop out. He quickly scans the room and sits next to Rochelle. He's so delighted that his physics A Level didn't work out. With reference to filter theory, explain how Tommy might try and form a relationship with 1 or more of the girls in his class. And then last but not least, Candice has never met Joseph from Tutor to You and has attended several of his psychology webinars. While she probably wouldn't propose to him if she met him face to face, in one webinar she blurted out, "Marry me." Use your knowledge of virtual relationships to discuss why Candice finds it easier to form relationships online. 16 marks. So you get the idea. Very easy to come up with scenarios. And there you've got a little bank of 5 of these that you can now use if you want to set an application essay, because I think if you're going to get an application essay, the relationships topic is one where it lends itself to that. Okay, so there we have it. So that's what to watch out for. So the new additions to the specification and just some application questions that you can use in your everyday teaching. So hopefully you find those useful. In the second part of this webinar, I just want to look at ways that we can use sample essays to help our students become effective at essay writing. And then as requested, I want to show you how you can turn a simple sort of Year 1 style evaluation paragraph into a Year 2 style evaluation paragraph, and hopefully give you some ideas on how you might do that. So what I've done for you is I've produced one sample essay for relationships on the question, discuss evolutionary explanations for partner preferences, and I put some sort of examiner style feedback down the side and put a mark band at the bottom on what it's roughly worth out of 16. Now, those of you that have used the essay writing resources that Tutor2You have provided will note that we kind of do a lot with essays, and we think it's a really important area. And there's kind of 5 key ways I think you could use just this one essay, and I've given you one version of each of them so that you don't have to do anything with this essay. You can just use the ones we've prepared for you. So the first one is just an idea called specialist terminology. Second one's called essay elaboration. You've then got an evaluation match-up task, a peer marking task, and a spot the mistakes task. So all quite simple ideas, but really, really effective. So version 1, what I've done is I've taken out all of the key terms, okay, or not all of them, but most of the key terms and different key terminology. Provided a keywords bank at the bottom of the essay, and the job of the student is really a simple one, is to sort of read through the essay and try and work out what key terms should go in there. It's even better if they can do it without referring to the keywords bank and actually working out from their knowledge of the theory, but the keywords are there to help them. And the goal of this version of the activity is really just to reinforce specialist and key terms, which is actually a whole section, or is worth marks essentially in the exam. When we mark holistically, specialist term and key terminology is something that we use in terms of awarding mark bands. What you can then do is ask the students, because you're giving them essentially a full essay, if you wanted to, as sort of a second part of this activity, you can get them to deconstruct the essay and turn it into a bullet point plan so they know that actually how this essay has been constructed or structured, which is really useful as well. Activity 2, essay elaboration, a slightly sort of more in-depth version, and this one is really actually just taking it to the next level. So rather than just removing the keywords, we've removed the keywords and a lot of the explanation of the essay. So we've given them a bare bones structure to the essay, and their job is to use their knowledge of the topic to practice explaining both their knowledge and their evaluation points. So much more difficult, but much more useful as a sort of middle step in essay writing. An activity I really like, and what I've done for you is I've taken the 3 or 4 evaluation points that are on that essay, mixed them up, but broken them into the point, the evidence, the explain, and the issues and debates where we've used them. And activity 3 really then gets the students to develop a logical meaning set of evaluation points from the sort of 9 statements. So you can either get them to cut them up and stick them in, or they can number them or highlight them in 3 different colours. They all work really, really well as an activity. What you can also do as a kind of extension task to this particular activity is then get them to add in a counter argument or an issue in a debate to enhance the evaluation point. So it goes again much further than just providing them with the statements. Your more able students can extend that activity and go much further. Fourth activity, peer marking, really, really valuable. It's not a perfect essay by any means. There's certainly things they can improve on it, or would never give them a sort of 16 out of 16 essay. And this activity, peer marking, is really just to get them really familiar with how holistic marking takes place. And there's a great topic video on that. So if you're not sure about marking, do watch the topic video that's in the channel I mentioned earlier. The idea is here you give them the full essay, and I've taken obviously the examiner commentary off on activity 4, and you ask them to work in pairs and use the peer marking grid to work out what mark they would give this essay and why. And then the important bit is that they suggest improvements to that essay. So anything that they think could have been elaborated further, they explain where and they highlight it on the essay. Or if they think the evaluation wasn't effective, how would they make it an effective evaluation point? So that's activity number 4. The fifth and final way, and there are more, I've just given you 5 for today, is a spot the mistakes. So I've given you another version of this essay, and I've put them in bold on this version on screen, but obviously in the real essay they're not in bold. And the students work their way through, and they need a good knowledge of the theory and the essay at this point. And their job is to circle and correct any errors that there are with the essay, and there's numerous errors. I've also provided you with a second copy that highlights where the errors are, just so you can get them to check themselves if you want to and assess. So there you have it, 5 sort of simple ways that you can use one essay, one sample essay, quite effectively without making it become dull by just giving them the sample essays to sort of rote learn, so to speak. Now what I want to do now is look at how to turn a year 1 evaluation point, and I'm going to use one from this sample essay, into a year 2 evaluation point. So let's take one issue with evolutionary explanations, and I'm going to put it in a really simple burger format to begin with. So students might write something like, one issue with evolutionary explanations is that they failed to take into account cultural influences. It's quite a nice point. They then bring in some evidence, and they've even brought in a study in this case. So mate selection can be affected by things like family upbringing, religion, and or social context. For example, Beresky et al. 1997 found that women in Hungary now look, and this was through adverts, for men who are family orientated, suggesting that resources are not the most important factor in terms of mate selection. Okay, so they brought in evidence. They might then go on to explain, they might say, well, this matters because it suggests that evolutionary explanations do not explain all partner preferences in all cultures, and therefore other factors may also play a role in shaping partner preferences. So that in itself is a very, very good evaluation point, and if a student wrote 3, 4 or more of those, it's certainly a very effective evaluation point, and it wouldn't hold them back. Now, a theme that we've kind of kept referring to through these webinars is that if your students can embed points into the middle of their sort of burger paragraphs, then they can actually enhance the sort of quality and the effectiveness of the evaluation, but they don't have to write more and more points because they're embedding extra evaluation within their sort of one paragraph, so to speak. So if we keep that paragraph exactly as it is, what I think you could then sort of get to your students to start thinking about is, well, can we slot in some more key terminology and an issue and a debate within that burger paragraph? And I think you can. So I've kept everything else exactly the same, and there's 2 ways actually you could do it with this essay. So all I've done is, if we take that evidence, the second point, and say, well, mate selection can be affected by family upbringing. For example, Beresky found that women in Hungary look for men who are family orientated, suggesting that resources are not the most important factor. What you can then do is get them to use their new key terminology and say, well, consequently, as a result of that, what evolutionary theories are doing is ignoring or minimising cultural differences, and this is known as a beta bias, therefore assuming that all humans are the same, and therefore assuming that partner preferences are the same, and that's obviously an issue. So that's one way you could do it, and that's just slightly enhance that evaluation point by throwing in part of the issues and debates topic, and throwing in some key terminology to impress the examiner. But that's not the only way you could do it. You could also throw in a different point and say, consequently, evolutionary theories suggest that behaviour is the result of nature, and they don't take into full account social or cultural factors involved in partner preferences, and therefore what they're doing is ignoring the role of nurture, which can play an important role in partner preferences. So you could do it in a different way, and still using an issue and debate to effectively bring in more evaluation within that point. Nothing to stop you bringing in both if you really want to show off. So just wanted to give you that one example to show you how you can turn a year 1 evaluation point into a year 2 style evaluation point for worth even more marks, essentially. So there we have it, sort of two different strands of essay writing. Hopefully you found those useful. I just want to sort of go on to the final section, which really I hope just gives you some sort of activities, some ideas and some inspiration for teaching in the classroom, and some things that might bring this topic to life a bit more. Now, the first thing, and apologies if you were in our webinar last night on issues and debates, because I have used this information before, so I'll go over it fairly quickly, is I think what's important for teachers and for students to do is to map the issues and debates to their year 2 content. So if we take the relationships topic and think about evolutionary explanations for relationships, straight away you could actually bring in a whole range of issues and debates there, like we've just done. Things like biological determinism, social sensitivity. So the idea that partner preferences are due to genetics is really arguing a biological determinism point of view. If we think about attraction, filter theory is trying to take a nomothetic approach. It's trying to formulate a general law about behaviour and how humans act. So it's trying to create a law that applies to all of us. So that's a nomothetic approach. If we take romantic relationships, we can talk about the fact that most research into romantic relationships is done in Western societies, and therefore there's a cultural bias with the research. If we take Duck's phase model, you could argue that that's potentially socially sensitive research because we're dealing with how relationships break down, and actually by investigating that, that could be intrusive or distressing for people taking part, and then what we do with that information is of consequence. And if we talk about parasocial relationships, the new part of the spec, again, that also takes a non-methetic approach because it uses things like celebrity attitude scales to identify parasocial relationships, taking a sort of quantitative approach to looking at these parasocial relationships. And this isn't the only ways, there's many more ways, but I think it's useful for students to have an overview of, in the different topics, where do these issues and debates fit in. Now, as I've mentioned also yesterday, I wouldn't suggest that you give the students the answer to that. I've provided you with a one topic table for every single topic as well as relationships, and I think this is something you'd get your students to work through using that sort of grenade poster where they can ask themselves the questions to work out where these different issues and debates fit into their Year 2 topics. Okay, to finish with, just want to give you some activity ideas and things that hopefully, as I say, will give you some inspiration when teaching this topic. The first one is a really simple idea, building on what I've just said. It's called Issues and Debates in Relationships. And this is just to get them to apply their knowledge of these issues and debates to different things. You'll definitely need to give your students a copy of that grenade poster, and you can use a spinner to select an issue and debate, and there's a great website, willdecide.com, there's many others, where you can put in your different issues and debates, spin the wheel, and whichever one it lands on, the students then have to turn that into an effective evaluation paragraph. And I've provided you with a blank grenade, so to speak, where they can transfer that information over to. So just a nice way that you can bring sort of the issues and debates to life a little bit more. On to 3 very classic activities which always provide good fun and always provide sort of a discussion point in this topic. The first of them I did use right at the beginning of the topic, and some students tend to be a bit shy around this. I know different teachers approach this task in slightly different ways. I would always get my male students to write down the characteristics they look for in their perfect woman on a blue post-it, and do the same from the female students on a pink post-it, and then get them to bring them up and stick them on 2 sides of the main whiteboard. And I mean, they come up with typical ones, but I mean, in the sort of 5 groups I taught this to last year, they also come up with some sort of ones that I've never come across before. So what you tend to find is that female students will typically write things. They want a tall man, someone who's funny, someone who's muscular, someone who's rich. I remember one girl wanted good teeth. I questioned and said, "Did you mean smile?" And she went, "No, I actually mean I want good teeth." Someone who's faithful. Those types of themes come up. Males, on the other hand, typically start off with looks, so they want her to be beautiful. One student wrote big assets, which made me laugh. So nice way of describing it. Good with children, maybe. Good with chores, that came up a lot. Good with Microsoft Excel, that's probably just my one. And then once you've got these, you can plot them onto the whiteboard, you can write them up larger, and straight away it gives you a fantastic sort of discussion point to say, well, actually, are there clear differences between what the women in the class are looking for and what the men in the class are looking for, and why do those differences come about? So it's just a nice introduction to the activity. A second classic, and this handout's courtesy of one of my old colleagues, actually wrote this, credit to her, is the Lonely Hearts advert activity, which really is getting your students to replicate a famous study by Wainforth and Dunbar in lessons, and you provide them with a copy of all the Lonely Hearts, and there's males and females on there, what they're looking for. And in the original study, what Wainforth and Dunbar found was that men typically look for youthfulness in their mate compared to females that don't look for that as much. Whereas men, on the other hand, look for an attractive partner compared to women who that's not as high up their priority list. So I've just given you the stats on the screen there. And what you can get them to do is actually conduct their own sort of content analysis, where they look for different variables. So how many of the female adverts mention wealth? How many of the female adverts mention attractiveness? How many look for age? How many look for family orientation? And do the same for men to see, are there clear differences just by analysing these different Lonely Hearts ads in terms of what males are looking for and what females are looking for. And a great discussion, again, will emerge from this particular task. The very final classic, and I can't actually provide you with one of these because it's there's so many copyrights surrounding using images like this, but I'll give you the idea that you can then run with in your own classrooms, is a way of testing the matching hypothesis in class. Really, really simple. What you want to do is find pictures of, it can be celebrity couples or normal couples online, and you want around 6 to 10 different couples. You then cut them in half and make sure you label them so that the male and female in each couple are both A, second couple will both be B, etc. And then the way to do this is a couple of ways, but the sort of the way I found typically works best is you give the male students all the female pictures and get them to rate their attractiveness in a table. You do the same for your female students, give them all the male photographs, and then what you want them to do is then bring them all back together and see, is there a form of correlation between both photo A's? Were they both attractive people, and can we support the matching hypothesis from this? And students find this task really, really good fun as well. So apologies I can't give you one of these tasks to do, but very easy to create just from Google Images by typing in celebrity couples and cutting them up. So great relationship classic. So there we have it. So that's some just ideas, activities and inspiration for the classroom. As always, all of these resources are available straight away in our Facebook group and will be sent out tomorrow morning as part of our daily digest. Of course, as always, any questions following this webinar, feel free to post in the Facebook group, drop me an email directly, and we'll do our best to sort of get those queries answered. Thank you once again. Any questions, drop me an email.